Good day, everyone. Welcome to our Juvenis Maxim podcast. I am very much humbled that we will be joining in with a wonderful speaker. I'm so excited to meet her, and just to give a brief introduction, Ayumi is a mindful and inquisitive bilingual Japanese and English educator. With a background in international studies and higher education leadership, she is passionate about empowering youth to discover themselves and step into their biggest and highest leadership potential by preparing them for college and beyond. Ayumi was born in Japan and moved to the States with her family at the age of 5. She has lived in Massachusetts, California, Virginia, and Hawaii, and spent some time living in Switzerland. She obtained a Bachelor of Arts in International Studies and Japanese from the University of Richmond and a Master of Arts in Higher Education Leadership from the University of San Diego. She has worked in the education, nonprofit, and private sector, as well as instructed SAT and ACT courses and facilitated dozens of college preparation courses and read hundreds of college preparatory essays and application essays over the years. She finds working with students most rewarding and hopes to continue empowering students in the academic, social emotional, and career success. So Ayumi is here with us. So Ayumi, I have one question for you.
Yeah.
Between food, home, or the language, what is the very first thing that you missed or you felt homesick when you were in your university days?
Oh, that's a great question. Food, 100%. Oh my gosh. My first year, I lived in a dorm and we only had the dining hall. And there was a kitchen, but it was far away a little bit. And I didn't have a car. And so I would go to the dining hall and it would be fried foods, it would be pasta and pizza and soda, none of the stuff that I was used to, and none of the food that I grew up eating. And so food was definitely the one thing that I missed the most.
I totally agree with you, Ayumi. It is also the first thing that I have been craving for, and that is what I'm really worried when I move in here in Vietnam for my master's degree. So, Ayumi, what are the different struggles of university students when it comes to their first years of studying?
Yeah. I think that, just overall going to college is such a big jump, such a big shift, right? You are living on your own for the first time. You have to manage your academics as well as social life and your emotional health as well. So I would say that, if I were to break it up into three big categories, I would say one, there's an academic shift about keeping up with the college level work, communicating with professors, how you show up in the classroom, your grades. And then there's social aspects, there's activities and clubs, parties and get togethers, and finding the right balance between academics and your social life. And like I mentioned, the emotional aspect is really big as well. So, homesickness, Fernando, you asked such a good question about food, but also you mentioned language and home, and those kinds of feelings are absolutely, a big factor and a big shift when you go to college. And so homesickness as well as social and academic anxiety, right? For most students, it's the first time that you are consistently surrounded by your classmates. You don't have a place to retreat to with your parents or somewhere that is uh, that you are comfortable with. It's your comfort zone. And so I think that sometimes that can be a big shift of always being like you have to um be in a new environment with different things going on. So I would say that those are the three main categories when it comes to shifts that students experience on their university journey.
I totally agree with you, considering that it's a totally new environment. And I guess food and language and a lot of emotional aspect is also part of it. So Ayumi, the next question is all about us identifying what are the different groups that we can involve with, thinking that we are away from home. How can we get connected?
Yeah. So I want to touch back on those three categories that I mentioned. So academically, Students can seek support from the university as far as tutoring centers, writing centers. There is the career center. There's also academic advising centers, and the professors themselves. So all of these centers and services are offered to students for free, and students can go whenever they need tutoring in a certain subject, if they want their essays read and um, given feedback on by peer students. You can go to the career center if you want to talk about, if you have no idea what you want your career to be, or if you want support building your resume, building networking, finding internships, finding a job, etc., you can go there for that kind of support. You also have academic advisors that you can go to in terms of what classes you should take for your major, what classes you should take to successfully land a job after college, all of those things. And then professors themselves, you can go to them and ask for advice to get better grades or any kind of advice. So there are so many support systems when it comes to that in academic spheres. And then there's also social support. For international students, I would say the International Center is a very big one, and I would recommend students to take advantage of that as much as possible. There would be the international counselors who read your applications and they accepted you into the college that you are now attending. And so going in there, connecting with the counselor once again might be a really good way to have that social connection. Uh, the International Center usually has a gathering place. It's a hub for all of the international students, and so you can gather there, make other students who are international students as well. There's also the Multicultural Center, and this is different from International Center, but this is for students who have a different background, an ethnic background. They gather here, maybe have events, um, uh, etc. So, in terms of social, there are so many opportunities as well. There's also ethnic student associations or organizations. I was part of the Asian Student Union. So that was a fraternity of Asian students, and we got together. We had some cooking nights actually, where we cooked our favorite meals and we shared with one another, and hosted and had cultural events related to Asian culture. So there's that. And then for emotional support, I would say that, there is the Health and Wellness Center. There's also mental health services, counseling centers. I know that that might be perhaps stigmatized, especially coming from Asian culture. I know that I had my own reservations going in. But let me tell you, my senior year, I was very stressed with writing my thesis, applying for jobs, and just the emotional toll of senior of college, the last year of college. Um, and so I started going to the counseling center, and um, I wish that I had gone sooner. It was a very private place where I felt comfortable to share my feelings, and I was given some tools to navigate my emotions. And so I highly recommend that for students. I know that that might be, something that you might feel a little uncomfortable, but I say try it out, and definitely utilize as much of the support system as possible, because these are all free for you while you're at college, and all of these things will help you succeed holistically in college.
Indeed, I totally agree with you, Ayumi, considering that there are so many challenges, but still, human resources is very important in the university life. And you have made mention about mental health a while ago, and I guess one thing that is very much talked about right now is how are we going, or what are the usual frustrations and fear that a student from an international setting encounters in a classroom setup?
Yeah. I would say that, this may not be just for international students. I think that for everyone, um, transitioning from high school to college, everything is so new. The classroom setup is different. You have a professor. Um, in college, there are more discussions, there are more papers. And so I would say that, everyone is in the same boat when it comes to those academic fears. So I want to alleviate that for the international students who are listening and say that you're not alone when it comes to those fears or frustrations. But I think that classroom participation is a very big transition from high school to college. And it may depend, actually. Depending on your high school, perhaps you had a smaller classroom size and there were more discussions, and you might be used to that. I know personally, I was not used to speaking up in class. I came from a high school with about 45 students in my classroom, and in college, I had about 20 to the smallest class I had was 5 students. And so being in that setting and being forced to participate in class was very overwhelming, and I was very anxious about it at first. So I can see that class participation, especially because there is, um, part of your grade is how much you participate in class, how much you speak up in class, how much you ask questions, interact with other students and professor. So knowing that that's being graded on, I assume that that would be, um a cause of frustration or fear. I also think that connecting with students in the classroom, right? Because you are coming in new, you are not only trying to keep up academically, but you want to make friends in class, or you want to connect with your classmates, maybe form study groups, or it's always comforting to have people that or people on your side in the classroom. And so I think connecting with students might be another thing that students might be worried about. And then also making connections with professors. I think that, especially coming from an Asian culture, I know that most times there is that hesitation to be friendly with teachers or professors. In Vietnamese culture, I'm sure as well, in Japanese culture, we have the honorific language. The teacher is always, above us, and we use specific language just to talk to them. In the US, students will easily call their professors by their first name. And sometimes professors on the first day of class, they'll say, "Hi everyone, call me Francisco, call me Peter," whatever. They'll ask to be called by their first name. I know personally, I just couldn't do that. I would always say Mr. So and so, or Miss, or Professor. I would say Professor something. For me, I just couldn't call them by their first name. But going back to just the concept of, it's more of a communal learning space. And so it's very important for students to establish relationships with their professors, to introduce yourself, to make it a habit to email, to drop in during office hours, to talk to professors, and make that connection. And I think particularly for international students, it would be good to have the professor know you, have them know that you are from a different country, and perhaps your expectations, what you're used to, is different from the expectations of the classroom. And making that connection with professors will hopefully give them a better understanding of where you're coming from, which could in turn help your grades, and they'll be more understanding of your situation. So, I would say I'm sure that there are more, fears and frustrations when it comes to the classroom, but those are some of the things that I can think of right now.
Definitely, indeed. We do have a lot of our own personal frustrations and fears as well. So, Ayumi, it's also nice that you talk about the different perspectives and dimensions to deal with classmates and professors. Since, in an Asian culture, there's a lot of honorifics and we are competitive in in some ways. So I guess one thing that I would like to ask in relation to this is in a perspective of a second learners wherein English is their second language. Because being here in Vietnam, teaching for almost 3 years, these kids or these students, their main concern is to be understood. And they are always bounded that I have this Vietnamese accent with me, and how will I be understood by my professors and classmates? It's not about the grammatically correct sentence that they have, but it's all about their way of delivering their ideas. And it's always, lagging them behind and pushing them backwards when it comes to opening up. So, when it comes to accents, which is something that is a very big concern to most of the students dealing with different versions of English. What are your words for them?
Yeah. You know, as I've grown older, I've realized that having an accent just means that you can speak a different language. And that is such an amazing quality to have, right? And if anyone is making fun of your accent or has certain feelings about that, that's on them. um I I know that there are internal struggles and internal maybe insecurities about the accent, but I just want to remind you that is proof that you can speak two languages and that you have the insight of both those languages and the cultural background as well, right? And also know that you are where you are because you belong there. In the classroom, you might feel insecure, you might feel like, oh, I don't belong, but that's not true. You belong there because you are there and you went through the rigorous college application process. The university accepted you, which means that you can do it and you belong there. And the college believes that you are capable of keeping up with everything in the classroom and everything that is going on the college campus. So I don't know that, how much that'll speak to the students, but I do want to reassure you that it's about reminding yourself that you belong there and that you have such a unique perspective and background and something that you can contribute really to the group because you have that understanding of a different cultural and linguistic background. I will say, so maybe this could be a tip for, as far as speaking in class or raising your hand and participating or asking a question. Something that I would do, because I also was a shy student in class, I was afraid to raise my hand and speak up. What I did was, as I was doing the homework or doing the reading, I would take notes. And on the side, I would write out sentences of what I would want to say in class. And so mentally, I was preparing myself, okay, if the professor started talking about this concept or this paragraph, I would raise my hand and ask this question. I would contribute, this idea or this thought. And so I would write it out, I would practice it, um, and then do it in class. So preparing yourself would be something that I recommend if you're not used to speaking or if you are nervous about speaking up in class. And eventually I got used to it. And after a while I got comfortable speaking. I didn't have to take notes anymore. It would come naturally, but it is a skill that you have to practice. And so, that could be a tip to write what you want to say and challenge yourself to speak out in class. I hope that answered your question, Fernando.
You definitely answered it, and you gave us a very strong insight that I guess our listeners right now should take into consideration that we, being part of an Asian community, we have our own identity. And this identity is what defines us, what makes us unique also once we'll be going out of our own boundaries or our going out of the country. And aside from that, Ayumi, I guess you will also agree with me that even the professors are diverse in terms of their backgrounds culturally, right? Which I guess you will never feel alienated because you will feel more proud that you have this kind of culture within you that is worth sharing. To be honest, Ayumi, that is one thing that is very difficult right now to inculcate to much of our students, even here in Vietnam, because they are used to following structures of communications and proper accent. So it's really a very important thing that you made mention on that aspect, and I guess that is a very good starting point for them to gain confidence in interacting with their classmates and teachers. On a personal note, Ayumi, what was your most memorable freshman experience?
Oh, that's a great question. Ugh, it's been a while. I'm gonna have to think about that. My most memorable experience. So like I mentioned, we lived in a dorm and we didn't have access to a kitchen, but there was like a communal kitchen in a different building. And so sometimes we were able to use that. And so my friends and I, we got together and we cooked our um, favorite home cooked meals. And that was really special. So I made Japanese curry. I had a friend who made tacos. I had a Korean friend, who made kimchi ramen for us. And it was a really fun and bonding experience to bring the recipes of our home, and to share it with others and also to eat our comfort food. So I would say that that is definitely the highlight of my freshman experience. But now that I look back, everything was such a precious moment and such a precious experience. Rooming with my first roommate, experiencing snow for the first time. I grew up in California, so I didn't get snow, and I went to college in Virginia. So, building a snowman, classes getting canceled because of snow. That was really exciting. Um, so it's hard to choose one, but it was all really fun.
Yeah, looking back at my university days, it's really hard to choose one because there's so many things that can happen in 4 or 5 years of your university life, which is, I
Yeah,
guess, a good, learning experience for each of us. So,
yeah.
Ayumi, as a final words for our listeners right now, what would be your main recommendation or insight for our Vietnamese learners aspiring to study in another country?
Yeah, I would say that, this is such an exciting and wonderful opportunity to study in a different country. I know that it can be intimidating and overwhelming at times, but I want to reassure you that if you are listening to this podcast, right, you are listening to it for a reason. It's because you are ready and you have the abilities to succeed in a college in the US. And all the things that you're doing now to prepare will absolutely pay off when you get there. And of course, when you get to college, there are going to be challenges that you didn't expect, or you're going to be put in, out of your comfort zone. But all that to say, it is a learning process, it's a growing process. And I hope that you are compassionate towards yourself and you can maintain the confidence, to know that you made it there. You are at that college for a reason. You have things to contribute, and other people want to be around you. Other people want to hear what you have to say. And so, take the entire experience, um, with open arms and an open heart.
Thank you so much, Ayumi. And I guess that is also aligned with the vision of Juvenis Maxim, allowing every Vietnamese learner or every student who wants to study in another country to have a good insight and for them to realize that we are all connected and there will always be a relationship that will be built as we go on through our university journey. And once again, Ayumi, thank you so much for being with us on today's podcast from Justice Juvenis Maxim. And we hope to see you for more sessions to come. Thank you so much, Ayumi.
Thanks, Fernando.
Yeah, and that ends our Juvenis Maxim podcast. We hope to see you on our next session. Have a great day, everyone.